After meeting her lover, Alyssa's eyes toward her husband changed overnight, from gentle warmth to icy contempt. Within days, her entire family joined forces, surrounding Nathan at their lavish suburban home, waving a thick stack of papers and sneering as they forced him to sign a prenup. To them, he was just a poor, unworthy husband, clinging to a woman far above his league, a man lucky to even sit at their table. But what Alyssa, her family, and her lover didn't know was that the quiet, humble man they mocked wasn't poor at all. He was a secret multi-billionaire who had built an empire in silence. The same empire their greed had just declared war against. As Nathan calmly placed his signature on the document, his eyes didn't show defeat. They revealed a storm no one in that room was prepared for. He smiled faintly, not because he accepted humiliation, but because the game had just begun. But who really was Nathan Cole behind that simple suit and quiet voice? Why would a billionaire let himself be humiliated by his own wife and her family? And what kind of revenge could a man that powerful unleash once love turned into betrayal? At the long, glossy oak table inside the Wrights' mansion, the air shimmered with silent judgment. Alyssa sat beside her new lover, Trevor Hayes, her diamond earrings swaying as she stared across at the man she once called her husband. "Nathan," her mother said with a sharp smile that carried the weight of generations of arrogance, "since you claim to love our daughter so much, prove it. Sign the prenup. If you're truly not after her inheritance, you shouldn't hesitate." The paper slid across the polished surface like a quiet blade. Alyssa's father leaned back, adjusting his gold cufflinks, while Trevor's smug grin reflected in the glass of wine he swirled lazily. Nathan looked down at the document, the clauses written by the very people who had once welcomed him into their home, and simply smiled. He wasn't poor, though every face in that room believed he was. He wasn't the desperate man they pitied. He was Nathan Cole, owner of Cole Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate hidden behind layers of shell companies, silent boards, and discreet trusts. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. He took the pen. "You want me to sign?" His tone was calm, steady, the kind that made even Trevor glance up for a brief, uncertain second. Alyssa folded her arms, rolling her eyes. "Stop pretending to be noble, Nathan. You and I both know you're lucky I stayed this long. Just sign it so we can move on." The word "move on" cut deeper than the ink he placed on the paper moments later. He signed without flinching, placed the pen neatly beside the contract, and rose from his chair. His silence was a thunderstorm waiting for lightning. Her family smirked in triumph. Her lover hid behind confidence. But as Nathan turned toward the window, the city lights beyond reflected not defeat, but calculation. The faintest curl of a smile touched his lips. Alyssa thought she'd just secured her future. Her family thought they'd protected her wealth. Trevor thought he'd won the ultimate prize, a wife with assets and a fool of a husband. But none of them had any idea the man they were mocking had already planned their downfall. Because beneath his quiet patience lived a mind that built empires from dust, and tonight he had just signed not a prenup, but their ruin. Days later, as Alyssa and Trevor paraded their affair in public, Nathan continued to play the poor, abandoned husband. He returned to the small apartment she had once mocked, surrounded by simple furniture and peeling paint. An illusion he'd built to test her love. She failed spectacularly. In the stillness of his room, he looked at a framed photo of them from better years. Her smile back then was genuine. Before greed poisoned it, he whispered to the image, "You just traded love for a lie, Alyssa." Flashbacks flickered. Nights when she'd promise him forever. Mornings when she'd kiss his cheek before rushing off to lunch with her co-workers, the same ones she'd later share hotel rooms with. He remembered her birthday last year when he bought her a modest necklace, and she cried, not from joy, but embarrassment. That was the day he knew what kind of woman she was. He'd built an empire in silence, preferring to be unseen, to study people, and she just confirmed what he always feared. Love for some was only real until money entered the equation. He opened a locked drawer and retrieved a small silver key, one that led to his real world. With a quiet determination, he packed a single bag, left the fake apartment, and drove through the night in an unmarked black Mercedes, until the city skyline melted into his private estate, a world Alyssa had never been allowed to see. The gates opened automatically, scanning his fingerprint. Inside, the marble foyer gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and assistants greeted him as Mr. Cole, a name whispered with reverence in boardrooms, but unknown to the woman who had just betrayed him. He walked into his office overlooking the coastline, where screens displayed the markets his companies controlled: steel, energy, real estate, tech, all hidden behind subsidiaries. He stood silently, watching the city below, the same city Alyssa and her new lover believed they ruled. "She forced me to sign a prenup," he murmured, a faint grin breaking through. "Good. Now there's no limit to how hard I can strike." He picked up the phone. "Logan," he said to his head of intelligence, "it's time. I want everything. Her family's accounts, Trevor's firm, their debts, the skeletons they hide in boardrooms. And do it quietly." Logan's voice crackled through. "Already ahead of you, sir. You'll enjoy what I found." Nathan's eyes hardened. "I planned to." As dawn broke, the first domino fell. A subtle market shift, a quiet phone call, a confidential leak. Nothing loud, nothing traceable. But the empire Alyssa's family boasted about had just started to crumble under invisible weight. And somewhere in her new penthouse, Alyssa woke up beside Trevor, smiling at the life she thought she'd stolen, completely unaware that her lover's company had just been bought out by her ex-husband. But what happens when the woman who mocked him realizes the man she left owns everything she worships? What happens when revenge moves in silence, wearing the face of calm mercy? Morning sunlight spilled through the vast windows of Alyssa's new penthouse, overlooking the city skyline. The marble floor gleamed, the chandelier sparkled, and Trevor Hayes lay sprawled on the couch in his robe, grinning at a tablet displaying headlines about his firm's latest breakthrough acquisition. Alyssa emerged from the bedroom in a silk robe, holding a cup of coffee and her phone, scrolling through social media filled with her own curated perfection. Designer bags, private dinners, laughter with friends she barely knew. She had everything she'd dreamed of, or so she thought. Trevor looked up, smirking. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes." "Oh, wait, not yet," he teased, pulling her onto his lap. "But soon. The world's going to see us for who we really are." She laughed, resting her head on his chest. "You mean rich, powerful, and untouchable." But behind that laughter, a faint tremor lived, a sliver of guilt that crept in when she remembered Nathan's calm eyes as he signed the prenup. That unshakable silence haunted her more than she wanted to admit. The way he didn't fight, didn't beg, didn't shout, it was wrong. Too calm, too knowing. Trevor noticed her distant look. "You're not still thinking about him, are you?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp. Alyssa forced a smile. "No, I'm just processing how fast everything's changed." He kissed her forehead, pretending reassurance, though his eyes held something colder, possession mixed with calculation. By noon, the Wright family arrived at the penthouse for lunch. Alyssa's mother, Eleanor, strutted in wearing pearls and perfume thick enough to coat the air. Her father, Charles, bragged about a new land deal his company had secured. "Now that you're free from that broke dreamer," Eleanor said, slicing her steak with satisfaction, "you can finally live like the woman you were born to be." Alyssa smiled faintly, nodding, though her chest felt oddly heavy. "He wasn't that bad," she murmured. Her father's fork paused midair. "Not that bad? He had nothing to offer you, Alyssa. Nothing. You did what any smart woman would do." Trevor leaned in with a charming grin. "Well, soon she'll have everything. I've already put her name on one of my accounts." Eleanor beamed. "See? A man who values her." The laughter continued. The champagne flowed. And yet, beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Small, invisible fractures spreading through the lives of everyone at that table. Across town, in his glass-walled office, Nathan Cole sat quietly as Logan entered, holding a dossier. "You'll want to see this," Logan said, dropping it on his desk. "Trevor Hayes' firm, Harrington Investments, is drowning in quiet debt. He's been laundering funds through shell companies to cover losses from bad trades. Alyssa's father's construction firm is one of his silent partners. If the market shifts just a little, Nathan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. They'll both collapse. Logan nodded. And their assets can be acquired through proxies at a fraction of their value. You'd own everything they think they control. Nathan smiled. Then let's shift the market. That night, his team executed quiet maneuvers, strategic leaks, subtle transactions, and precision-time moves in the shadows of finance. By morning, rumors rippled through the stock exchange, whispering of instability in Harrington Investments. Investors panicked. Phones rang. Accounts froze. At 9:07 a.m., Trevor stormed into his office, shouting orders. Find out who started this. I want the source. His assistant looked pale. Sir, one of the companies buying up our shares is registered under a trust, Cole Holdings. Trevor froze. The name hit like a ghost walking through his office. He dismissed her with a trembling hand, his heart racing. Cole Holdings. It couldn't be. Nathan Cole? No. Impossible. The man was nothing, a nobody. Yet the coincidence sent a chill crawling down his spine. By afternoon, the Wright family received calls from their banks. Mr. Wright, there's an issue with your construction contracts. The permits are being reviewed. Funding has been suspended. His voice rose in disbelief. Suspended? By who? The banker hesitated. Cole Infrastructure Group. Eleanor's face drained of color when her husband slammed the phone down. Cole. That name again. Who the hell is Cole? Back in her penthouse, Alyssa was getting dressed when Trevor burst through the door, panic breaking through his practiced charm. Something's happening to my firm, he said, pacing. Someone's buying everything, quietly, ruthlessly. The name keeps showing up, Cole. Does that mean anything to you? Her hand froze on her necklace. For a brief second, her mind flashed to that last night with Nathan. The way he said her name when he signed the prenup. The faint curve of his lips. The calmness that didn't feel like defeat but warning. No, she whispered, shaking her head, though her voice trembled. It can't be him. He doesn't have that kind of power. Trevor turned toward her, suspicion flickering. You sure about that? That evening, Nathan sat alone by the large window of his mansion, the city glowing beneath him like a kingdom he already owned. His phone buzzed. A message from Logan. Logan, Phase 1 complete. They're in free fall. Nathan typed back 2 words. Let them burn. He leaned back, closing his eyes, exhaling slowly. For the first time in months, he felt something close to peace. But beneath that calm lived the cold satisfaction of justice slowly unfolding. Measured, elegant, and unstoppable. And far away, as Alyssa stared out her window, the city lights looked different that night. Less like promise, more like warning. By the 3rd day, Alyssa's perfect life began to unravel faster than she could fake another smile for the cameras. Her phone buzzed nonstop with calls from banks, lawyers, and former friends suddenly turning cold. The penthouse that once felt like paradise now pulsed with tension. Trevor's shouting echoed through every marble wall. Do you understand what's happening, Alyssa? He snapped, slamming his phone down. They're liquidating everything. Someone's cornered us on the market, and my partners are panicking. We're being blacklisted from deals we created. Alyssa stood near the window, clutching her robe, her face pale. Who would do that? You said you were untouchable. Trevor's jaw tightened. I was, until someone decided to play God. He turned to her, eyes burning with suspicion. That name, Cole, it keeps appearing everywhere. Whoever he is, he's methodical, strategic. He's destroying everything connected to me and your family. She swallowed hard, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. Cole. The name felt heavier now, carrying the echo of a man's quiet voice, the calm that once unnerved her. The night Nathan signed that prenup replayed in her mind like a haunting scene she couldn't escape. Later that afternoon, she went to her parents' mansion. It used to smell like expensive candles and old money. Now it reeked of panic. Boxes were scattered in the foyer, documents spilled across the table, and Charles Wright barked into his phone while Eleanor sat on the couch, trembling behind her glass of wine. What's going on? Alyssa asked, stepping in carefully. Charles slammed the receiver down. We're ruined. Our accounts are frozen. Our assets seized. The government's auditing us for fraud, and someone tipped them off. Eleanor's voice cracked. All our contracts were canceled overnight, Alyssa. Every investor pulled out. Whoever's doing this knows exactly where to strike. Alyssa's pulse quickened. You said the name Cole came up before, right? Charles glared at her. Yes, but it's just a coincidence. We don't know anyone named Cole. Her throat tightened. I do. They both turned toward her. Nathan Cole, she whispered. My ex-husband. The room fell silent. Only the ticking clock dared to move. Eleanor laughed bitterly. That poor excuse for a man? Don't be ridiculous. He couldn't afford a decent suit, let alone destroy an empire. But Alyssa didn't answer. She was staring into nothing, her hands trembling. Something inside her already knew the truth. His calmness, his confidence, the way he never fought back. It wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Back in his mansion, Nathan stood in front of a massive screen displaying a map of interconnected businesses. The Wright Construction Group, Harrington Investments, Wright Realty, all glowing red. Logan entered quietly. They've lost everything, sir. Trevor's firm is bankrupt. Charles Wright filed for emergency liquidation. Alyssa's credit cards are maxed, accounts locked. They're scrambling. Nathan nodded slowly, emotionless. Good. Logan hesitated. You know, most men would have confronted them publicly. You could have crushed them in court, humiliated them. Nathan's gaze shifted toward the window, where rain streaked the glass. Public humiliation gives them attention. Silence gives them nightmares. I want them to wake up every morning wondering who's pulling the strings. That's better than headlines. That night, as the Wright mansion went dark, Alyssa sat alone in her childhood bedroom, scrolling through her phone. Every friend gone, every contact avoiding her. Even Trevor had left hours ago after a violent argument. He'd called her dead weight, said she brought him bad luck, and stormed out, leaving her sobbing in the dark. On the other side of town, Nathan watched security footage from his network, seeing Trevor stumble drunkenly into a club, his arrogance cracking into despair. Nathan turned off the monitor. He'll self-destruct without help, he murmured. He poured himself a drink, leaned back, and for a fleeting moment allowed the loneliness to sink in. Revenge had filled the silence, but it hadn't erased the ache she'd left behind. He hated that a part of him still cared. His thoughts were interrupted by Logan's call. Sir, we've got a situation. I think they're planning something desperate. I intercepted a message from one of Charles Wright's associates. He's hired muscle. They think if they scare you, you'll back off. Nathan's lips curved into a cold smile. Let them come. 2 nights later, he was driving home through the quiet stretch of countryside when headlights appeared behind him, blinding and fast. His instinct screamed seconds before the impact. His car was rammed from the side, spinning off the road, crashing into a ditch. Pain seared through his ribs. Blood blurred his vision. Footsteps. Voices. One of them shouted, "Check if he's dead!" Then silence. The thugs fled as another car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the rain. A young woman stepped out, rushing toward him, her nurse's uniform still faintly visible under her jacket. "Hey, can you hear me?" she shouted, kneeling beside him. He groaned faintly, his eyes struggling to open. She pressed her fingers to his pulse. "You're alive. Stay with me." She dragged him out of the wreck, her hands trembling but steady. "My name's Elena. You're going to be okay." He tried to speak, but the world tilted again. Her voice faded, soft but determined. "Don't you dare give up now." As darkness swallowed him, the last thing he saw was her face illuminated by the rain. Kind, focused, and nothing like the faces that had betrayed him. And somewhere between pain and oblivion, Nathan Cole realized that fate had just introduced him to the one person who would change everything. Nathan woke to the faint scent of antiseptic and lavender. The room was small but spotless, the morning light breaking softly through lace curtains. For a moment he didn't remember where he was. The beeping of a heart monitor, the clean white sheets, the faint hum of the city outside. Then, slowly, flashes returned. The crash, the headlights, the rain, the woman's voice. When the door opened, she stepped in quietly with a tray. A young woman in her late 20s, hair tied back loosely, eyes calm but alert. "You're awake," she said, her tone gentle yet firm. "That's good. You had a mild concussion and a couple of fractured ribs. You were lucky. He tried to sit up, wincing. Where am I? At my place, she replied. You were unconscious when I found you. The hospital wanted to keep you longer, but you were restless. And honestly, you didn't seem like the type who enjoys questions. So I signed you out and brought you here. I'm Elena Moore. I'm a nurse at St. Catherine's. Nathan studied her face. There was something disarmingly genuine about her. No pretense, no calculation, just quiet competence. You saved my life, he murmured. She shrugged slightly. I was just in the right place at the right time. He tried to thank her again, but his throat tightened. For the first time in years, someone had helped him without wanting anything in return. That realization stung deeper than his wounds. Over the next few days, Elena cared for him meticulously, changing his bandages, bringing him soup, keeping the room warm. She never asked too many questions, though she clearly sensed that he wasn't who he appeared to be. He gave his name only as Nathan, nothing more, and she didn't push. One evening, she found him standing by the window, staring out at the city lights through the pain in his ribs. You shouldn't be up yet, she said softly. I've had worse, he replied, his voice hoarse. She walked closer. You have the eyes of someone who's lost a war. He looked at her surprised. And how would you know that? Because I've treated soldiers, she said simply. Different uniforms, same silence. Something about her presence disarmed him. She didn't see him as a billionaire, or a victim, or a man on a mission. She saw the weight he carried, even without knowing the story. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to exhale. Meanwhile, across town, Alyssa's world continued collapsing. Her parents had gone into hiding after the investigation into their fraudulent contracts intensified. Trevor, desperate to save himself, began selling everything they own. Reporters hounded their doorstep. The once lavish penthouse now echoed with emptiness. Alyssa's reflection in the mirror barely looked like her. Hollow eyes, fading glamour. Desperation replacing pride. Maybe I deserve this, she whispered one night, her trembling hands clutching the last of her jewelry. But then bitterness returned. No, he did this to me. Nathan did this. She didn't know where he was, or if he was even alive. But the thought of him, that calm, unbothered gaze, haunted her. Back in Elena's apartment, Nathan sat at the small kitchen table while she folded laundry. You don't talk much, she said with a faint smile. People who bottle everything up usually have the loudest storms inside. He looked up slowly. You wouldn't believe my storm. Try me. He hesitated, then said, I lost everything I thought mattered. But in the process, I realized I still have more power than the people who tried to destroy me. She tilted her head, intrigued but cautious. That sounds complicated. He smiled faintly. Complicated is my middle name. For a moment, they both laughed, a quiet, honest sound that felt foreign to him. Later that night, Elena checked his bandages again. Her hands were steady, gentle. You'll heal, she said. Physically, he asked. She looked up, meeting his gaze. All wounds heal if you let someone care for them? The words struck deeper than she knew. Nathan stared at her, something shifting quietly inside him. Something warmer, softer. He hadn't realized how starved he was for kindness until it stood right in front of him. In the following days, his strength returned. He helped her fix the old radiator, cooked breakfast one morning, and even repaired her flickering hallway light. The simplicity of it all, the shared meals, the laughter, felt almost unreal to a man who once commanded empires. But as his body healed, the old world started calling again. Logan reached out, urging him to return to his operations. Sir, they think you're dead, Logan said over the phone. Alyssa's family is drowning in lawsuits. Trevor's firm has collapsed completely. What are your next orders? Nathan looked toward the kitchen, where Elena hummed softly while making tea. Not yet, he replied. Let them believe I'm gone a little longer. When he hung up, he stood silently at the window, torn between two worlds, the ruthless precision of revenge and the quiet peace he'd found under this roof. That evening, Elena joined him by the window. You look like a man staring at ghosts, she said. He smiled faintly. Maybe I am. Then maybe it's time to stop chasing them, she whispered. The living need you more than the dead. Her words lingered long after she left the room. For the first time, Nathan questioned whether revenge was enough, or if, after all the ashes settled, he'd have anything left of himself to rebuild. But destiny wasn't done yet, because as peace crept into his heart, trouble was already on its way. Across town, a desperate, furious Trevor was plotting something reckless, something that would drag them all back into the fire. The rain came down hard that night, blurring the city lights into ribbons of golden gray. In a dim bar on the east side, Trevor Hayes sat hunched over a glass of whiskey, his tie loosened, his pride stripped raw. The television above the counter played a breaking news segment about the collapse of Harrington Investments and the criminal investigations that followed. His own face flashed briefly on the screen, once a symbol of success, now a warning of ruin. "Turn that off," he barked, slamming the glass down. The bartender didn't argue. He just walked away. Trevor's reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger, eyes sunken, hands shaking. He pulled out his phone and called Alyssa. She answered on the second ring, her voice exhausted. "Trevor, what do you want? I told you." "Shut up and listen," he cut her off. "This is all his doing. Nathan, that bastard's alive. I can feel it. Nobody else could dismantle everything so precisely." Alyssa hesitated, her breath catching. "He's dead, Trevor. He was in an accident weeks ago. They found his car." "Then why is the world falling apart piece by piece exactly the way he would have planned it?" Trevor's voice cracked into hysteria. "I can't lose everything, Alyssa. I won't." He hung up and downed the rest of the whiskey, his mind twisting into something darker. Within hours, he was in a parking lot, exchanging cash with a man whose face stayed in the shadows. "You said you can find him," Trevor hissed. "If he's alive, I want proof. And if he is, finish what the last idiots couldn't." Meanwhile, Nathan sat quietly at Elena's kitchen table, sorting through documents Logan had delivered under the radar. He was healing fast. The bruises had faded, the ribs still ached but held steady. Elena poured tea beside him. "You've been pacing for an hour," she said softly. He forced a smile. "Old habits. I used to control too many moving parts. Hard to sit still when you're used to the world obeying your plans." "You talk like a man who lost a kingdom," she teased gently. He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Maybe I did." Before he could say more, a knock at the door broke the calm. Elena frowned. "I wasn't expecting anyone." She opened it cautiously, but there was no one there. Only an envelope on the doormat. She brought it in and handed it to Nathan. His fingers froze the moment he saw the handwriting. Inside were 3 photographs, grainy, zoomed-in shots of him outside her apartment, alive, walking with a cane. And a single note, "Found you." His heart went cold. "Elena," he said quietly, standing up, "you need to go stay with a friend for a few days. Don't ask questions." She frowned. "Nathan, what's going on?" "It's not safe for you here," he said, voice low, urgent. "Please, trust me." She hesitated, but the look in his eyes made her nod slowly. "All right, but promise me you'll call if—" "I will," he said. He watched her pack and leave through the side door before locking every bolt in the apartment. Then he dialed Logan. "They've found me," Nathan said. "Trevor? Most likely, but they won't get another chance." Hours later, as thunder rolled across the sky, Nathan waited by the window, every muscle taut. A car idled outside for a long time before 2 figures stepped out, dressed in black. He moved silently, turning off the lights, positioning himself behind the door. When it creaked open, he struck first. Fast, controlled, military precise. Within seconds, one man was down, the other gasping as Nathan pressed his forearm against his throat. "Who sent you?" Nathan growled. "Hayes. Trevor Hayes," the man wheezed. "He wants you gone. He thinks you're a ghost." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Then I'll haunt him properly." He let the man drop and walked outside into the rain, disappearing into the night. By dawn, he was back at his estate, dressed in a tailored suit for the first time since the crash. The quiet, humble act was over. The mask had served its purpose. His empire was calling, and this time he would end it himself. Meanwhile, Alyssa awoke to banging on her door. It was the police. "Mrs. Hayes," one officer said, though she wasn't legally married, "we need you to come with us. Trevor Hayes has been found dead at the docks. Her knees buckled. What? How? Gunshot wound. Point blank. We're treating it as a homicide. She stared blankly as they spoke, her mind spinning. Trevor's last words echoed, Nathan's alive. Her pulse quickened, tears stinging her eyes not from grief, but from dread. That evening, as rain drummed against the windows of her empty apartment, she sat alone, whispering into the dark. If you're out there, Nathan, please stop. Across the city, Nathan stood by the balcony of his office tower, staring into the storm. Logan entered quietly. It's done, he said. Trevor's out of the picture. The Wrights are bankrupt and facing trial. What now? Nathan's eyes stayed on the horizon. Now, I start living again. He turned toward the elevator, determination hardening his expression. I'm done with ghosts. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over, because love and vengeance never truly end cleanly. And though he had destroyed everyone who betrayed him, the woman who started it all was still out there, broken, terrified, and haunted by his silence. And for the first time, Nathan didn't know if forgiving her would be harder than destroying her. The courthouse steps were slick with rain when Nathan arrived, black coat brushing against his tailored suit as flashes from reporters' cameras sliced through the gray morning. Inside, the Wright family was being arraigned for fraud and embezzlement, charges built quietly by the very man they once mocked. Alyssa sat in the corridor outside the courtroom, pale and hollow-eyed, clutching a damp tissue as though it could hold her world together. When she saw him, she froze. For a moment, she didn't breathe. He looked the same, and yet nothing like the husband she'd discarded. Stronger, colder, his eyes unreadable. He stopped in front of her, and the echo of their silence drew every gaze in the hall. You're alive, she whispered. I am, he said simply. Disappointed. Tears trembled at the edge of her lashes. You did this to us? He studied her face. No, Alyssa, you did this to yourself. I just removed the illusions you lived on. She rose unsteadily, voice shaking. I made a mistake. I was scared of being poor, of failing my family. You hid everything from me. I hid who I was to see who you were, he said quietly, and I saw enough. The bailiff opened the doors on calling names, and the Wrights shuffled past in handcuffs, their arrogance replaced by disbelief. Eleanor's eyes met Nathan's for a single heartbeat before she looked away in shame. He stepped aside, letting them pass. Outside, the rain thickened. Alyssa followed him to the marble steps, her words breaking. Is there anything left in you that can forgive me? He turned toward her slowly. Forgiveness isn't the problem. Forgetting is. She reached for his hand, but he pulled back. You once told me love dies when money enters the room, he said. Now you know what happens when greed replaces it. Her knees weakened. What will you do now? He glanced toward the waiting car. Live the life you traded away. She watched him leave until the taillights disappeared into the mist, the sound of the rain swallowing her sobs. For the first time, Alyssa understood what real loss felt like. Not the loss of wealth, but of a man who once loved her more than she deserved. Later that evening, the storm gave way to a pale gold sunset. Nathan drove out of the city, through quiet streets and toward the small apartment where a single light glowed behind the curtains. Elena opened the door, surprised but smiling. You came back. I promised I would, he said. She stepped aside and he entered, the familiar scent of lavender wrapping around him like peace. He handed her a small bouquet, wildflowers from the roadside, dew still clinging to the petals. They're not expensive, he said, almost shy. They're perfect, she whispered. They sat by the window as the sky cleared. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence between them felt full rather than empty. Finally, Elena said, You look lighter. I closed a chapter today, he answered. One written in betrayal. And the new one? He looked at her, his expression softening. Maybe this one's written in healing, she smiled. Then let's write it slowly. He reached for her hand and she didn't pull away. Outside, the city lights flickered like quiet applause. Weeks passed. News outlets moved on to new scandals. The Wright Empire was gone. Trevor's name faded into rumor. But in a small coastal town 2 hours from the city, a new hospital wing opened. funded anonymously by the Cole Foundation. Elena supervised the nursing staff. Nathan visited often, helping without fanfare. One afternoon, as she adjusted a child's blanket in the recovery ward, she glanced up to see him watching her. He had traded boardrooms for this, quiet corridors filled with hope instead of greed. She walked over, teasing, "You're terrible at pretending you're not the donor." He chuckled. "I'm just a volunteer now." She studied him for a moment. "Do you ever miss the power?" He shook his head. "Power was easy, peace is harder, and more valuable." That night they walked along the pier under the fading light. The sea was calm, the air warm. Nathan stopped, turning toward her. "You saved me that night on the road, Elena. You thought you were saving a stranger, but you saved a man who'd forgotten what it meant to live." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe the universe owed me a good deed." He slipped a small box from his pocket and opened it. Not a diamond, but a simple gold band. "I don't need grand gestures anymore. I just need something real." Elena's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "For the first time in my life." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Then yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and they stood there, the ocean whispering below, the city far behind them. For Nathan Cole, revenge had ended where love began again, not in luxury, not in triumph, but in quiet redemption. Somewhere miles away, Alyssa watched the same sunset from a rented room, a faded newspaper on her lap showing the headline, "Anonymous Billionaire Funds Hospital." She stared at the photo, the silhouette of a man beside a nurse, and smiled sadly. "He found peace," she whispered. "Maybe that's my punishment." The wind carried her words away, leaving only the echo of choices and the cost of greed. And in the fading light, Nathan wrapped his arm around Elena, the storm of his past finally settling into calm. The man the world once underestimated had not only rebuilt his empire, he had reclaimed his soul.